Good evening, everyone. It's 9:09, and I'm here to share with you that everything's going to be just fine. Now, look, starting off with the president that we left off with in the last episode of Jupiter and Saturn New Moons, 1941 to 2021, we want to look at the largest player with the chart. And the largest player is the sun, which is 99% of our life. He sheds all light in our world. Now, look at the assassination chart here. The assassination chart is on the outside, and what we learned from that is at the point of JFK's death, the sun was opposing his sun, where his sun was the 28 degrees Taurus. He's a Taurus that wants to be a Gemini, and it's opposed 29 degrees Scorpio. That's where the transit of the sun is. So that's a harsh time period. It's an opposition. It's when things are least likely the way you enjoy them to be. I mean, he's at the opposing point of his solar cycle on his return on your solar return. If you look at solar return charts, you feel most at home if you are a Taurus that wants to be a Gemini. You're most at home when the sun is in this area right here. That's, the sun's close to where your natal sun is. You feel safe and secure. You feel everything's going your way. But over here, we learned this things weren't going JFK's way. Not the way he thought them. He had no idea that he was going to get shot. He was waving like he was having a good time, but unfortunately, he was waving to say goodbye. Now, let me show you this. This is very important that we understand the cycles. Let's now flash forward to December 31st, 2019. Now, as we can see here, when you look at the sun compared against the USA's natal chart, that is, which was July 4th, 1976, is 5:10 p.m. That's when they were all signing the Declaration of Independence. The sun was over here in Cancer, and Jupiter was there too, and Venus. It's a big time, right? These are major players all hanging out together, especially the sun and Jupiter. They're just, what are they? Nine, odd degrees out, but they're hanging out together, okay? And all conjunctions with the sun is like a 10-degree orb, right? So, but most importantly, when we look at the COVID announcement, it's at 8 degrees Capricorn. So the sun is opposed the US's Venus, US's Jupiter, and the US's Sun. Okay, so we see a cycle. We see a cycle showing here. Now let's take the cycle to the president that we're going to talk tonight, and the year that he had to deal with during the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction of 1941. This is the biggest year that I have for you today. Let's look up here. Now let's look at Pearl Harbor here. Pearl Harbor attack it happens when the sun is at 12 degrees Sagittarius, okay? Now when we looked at these other times, when we look at these other time periods, the sun is almost in opposition or in direct opposition of the US's sun, okay? But here it's not quite right. But things are just heating up. This is the bigger trend all together here, and the reason why is because when we look at the Declaration of Independence, and we look at the sun here, what's actually happening is, let's think about just 30 days later, because the sun's going to go. I mean, when the sun's going to be opposite to to the natal sun of the USA, when the sun's going to be opposite, things have even ramped up that much more. And believe me, this was just Pearl Harbor. This is the Japanese first attack. And this was a series. This was World War II. Was World War II because there was big boom booms involved, right? Now let's take a look here. Let's go. Let's say, okay, let's look into let's look into history books and let's see what happened 30 days or 30 degrees after the sun was at this point of 15 degrees Sagittarius. Let's go all the way over here into Capricorn, where the sun should be opposite to the U.S. sun and the U.S. Jupiter. Okay, now let's check this out. Behind this little tab here, I will have this on Wikipedia. Thank God for Wikipedia, right? You know the Father loves the Wikipedia place. Now here's January 1st. We're going to scroll down. Lots of things are happening. It's a big year, and of course we are at war. Now let's go down to the 6th and the 7th, okay? The 6th and the 7th is when the sun is opposing. That's when the major opposition starts with the U.S. sun. So let's look at the 6th, okay? And then we'll look at the 7th. And I'll even zoom up for you so you can read this. This is the biggest episode yet, folks, and I will go back to Donald Trump and show you why. It's very imperative that we look at history and seeing that cycles do repeat themselves for the U.S., okay? And here we go. January 6th. This is 30 days after the Pearl Harbor. This is like 29 to 30 days after the Pearl Harbor attack, right? U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. There's a stern man of much determination and much vision and much hope for humanity. He gave his State of the Union address to Congress. Now, hopefully, our President Donald Trump will listen to Franklin D. Roosevelt's voice and heed his heart and heed his vision for his future of the U.S. Okay, here we go. January 6, 1942, a Tuesday. Tuesdays ruled by Mars, by the way. U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt gave the State of the Union address to Congress. In fulfilling my duty to report upon the State of the Union, I am proud to say to you that the spirit of the American people was never higher than it is today. The Union was never more closely knit together. This country was never more deeply determined to face the solemn task before it. The president began. The response of the American people has been instantaneous, and it will be sustained until our security is assured. We have not been stunned. We have not been terrified or confused. This very resembling of the 77th Congress today is proof of that the mood of quiet, grim resolution which here prevails bode ill for those who conspire and collaborate to murder world peace. That mood is stronger than any mere desire of revenge. It expresses the will of the American people to make very certain that the world will never so suffer again. This is January 6th, folks. 30 days. And then on January 7th, when the sun is perfectly opposite to the U.S. sun, we go to the Battle of Bataan. And you can look at it. It was a harsh battle. It happened. I'll let you look it over. But the thing is that there was a surrender. But here we are, 30 degrees after the Pearl Harbor attack. But think about FDR and his message to the people. Where does such a voice come from? And this is where I will show you FDR's chart. First off, FDR is a very unique president in these 80 years of presidents that I've looked at, including these 5 that I've talked upon, it with FDR being the final one to look at. And the reason why I say this is because what we've been studying over the last 5 episodes is a Jupiter and Saturn new moon. Now what makes FDR a very unique case is FDR was born just days after a Jupiter and Saturn new moon. And in his chart, he has Saturn, Neptune, and Jupiter all together in a conjunction here. It's a beautiful chart, and this is probably the reason why FDR is probably the most sensational president of the last 80 years for the United States and the world in general. I mean, he has almost the star of Bethlehem in his chart. The two planets are very close, balancing each other out, and he is truly the futuristic vision of progress and humanitarianism for the U.S. for the next 80 years. And what is most important, what is also key about his chart is that on the Jupiter and Saturn 1941 new moon, we see that Uranus is in Taurus at 22 degrees. We see also Jupiter and Saturn are at 9 degrees, which in connection to his chart, the Jupiter and Saturn new moon is right there between his natal Saturn and his natal Neptune. And where was Pearl Harbor and most of the U.S. war fought? At sea. So this is very important. The other thing I have to go back to this new moon and look at, and this pulls us now to Donald Trump and the U.S. and the U.S.A. in its current state. When we go and we look for the U.S. chart for this time period, where do we find? First off, we find. Let me zoom it up here so we can see this. Here's Donald Trump, the 14th of June. This is this is on December 21st. This is when the new moon, the Jupiter and Saturn new moon, takes place. But what is important here, not only this right here and its opposition to the U.S. leader, we also have to look at our current cycle of Uranus and Taurus. So the last time in 1941, Uranus was in Taurus, and this was 80 years ago. So Uranus is about to make its return to where it was when the U.S. was in a full-fledged war. And I hope that this isn't the case in the staging ground for World War III. I am hoping this, and I'm praying. I am hoping that the leaders of the world will hear me tonight and see that the U.S. did not favor well at the Battle of Bataan or the Philippines. Even though they gave a courageous fight, they did have to surrender. And it says here the American soldier at Bataan to the Japanese was 76,000 surrendering soldiers. In the Philippines to get, the American surrender at Bataan to the Japanese was 76,000 soldiers surrendering in the Philippines altogether. So it was a huge surrender. And what we must look at here, folks, is going back to FDR's words, which only were delivered to the U.S.A. and its citizens just 30 days after the Pearl Harbor attack. That we have to look at. It expresses the will of the American people to make certain that the world will never so suffer again. We must go back on these words. We must venture back because we must express this sentence, this pledge by this U.S. president that the U.S. does not want suffering like the suffering of World War II or beyond that. And it hasn't been a pretty 80 years for the U.S. The cycles constantly repeat themselves, and the manifestations are spiraling, and we must look at the wishes for this president's people and what he was in office signing each and every document each and every day to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to prevent the murder of world peace. What an amazing president. And the reason why he has such a heart here is because of this Jupiter Saturn new moon in his chart, in his 8th house of legacy. But the other reason is that FDR was in Aquarius, but his sun was in a house of Leo. And Leo, this house of Leo, this 5th house, is about the cares of the heart. And then if the earth is going to be in a place at that time of birth, it will be in Leo, in his 11th house of community and groups and humanitarianism and futuristic thinking. These are things that is focused when you have such a chart like this, because his moon is in Cancer. He's right at home, and his Mars is there too, and they're all very close. They make all connection to the. They make a beautiful connection to the Declaration of Independence. And the reason why I say this is because the Mars of the U.S. is in Gemini, and the Sun is in Cancer. Right? So when we go back to the FDR chart and we see his moon is in Cancer, where the U.S.'s sun is in Cancer. So they're just two buddies, you know. He looks after the U.S. and the needs of the U.S. When you have a president with a sun or with a moon in Cancer, and you have a country with a sun in Cancer, that president is trying to look after the country as if it was his wife. And that's the reason why he was elected for 8 terms, because he took care of the nation. He put all his personal needs aside, and his self-sacrifice was unlike any other in our modern history. So I'm very happy to share with you these charts, and I want you to hear the inspiration that I've received from the Father above, the solar cell that provides all life on Earth. I want you to experience this time with me and see how uplifting it is in my life to see such an amazing world leader looking after his nation as if it was his wife, and protecting her every single day and providing for her like it was his wife. All the best, folks, from Crownland Productions, and let's all hope and pray that humanity finds its way through the next years to come as we overcome this epidemic that has caused so much hardship and suffering across the globe. Good night, folks, and all the best. I appreciate your time and your patience with these reports. I hope they've been enlightening to your soul. Until next time, this is Johnny with Crownline Productions, and all I can say is over and out. Bye-bye.